Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's also Running on Ice, the newsletter that you can subscribe to on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. Before we get into our guest interview, let's get into some headlines. The IV bag market has hit a boom that is a little shocking. Intravenous fluid bags are used for delivering medication for chronic diseases, cancer, kidney disease, and etc. Health and safety measures have increased the use of disposable IVs as they are much more convenient and easier for people to use. With the rising prevalence of chronic disorders such as diabetes, cancer, and the growing geriatric population, the demand for disposable IV bags has dramatically increased, meaning the global market is valued at $4.5 billion and expected to grow in 8.6% annually through 2030. The frozen bakery market is anticipated to expand its roots at a steady compound average growth rate of 6.5% between 2023 and 2033. The market is anticipated to cross a market share of $85 billion by 2033, while it is likely to be valued at $48 billion in the United States in 2023. The restoration of the bakery industry, along with the young population choosing ready-to-eat food products, are adding value to market growth. The rising popularity of gluten-free organic bakery superfoods has gained traction for the market. New vendors experimenting with bakery items such as bread, dough, and toppings are also attracting their consumer base, expanding the industry across regions. Speaking of frozen baked goods, a new player has entered the chat. Creator of the texturally uncomfortable, I said what I said, but still a fan favorite chocolate donut, Entenmann's is coming to your freezer aisle. Bimbo Bakeries USA Entenmann's is getting into ice cream with a line of frozen treats inspired by the brand's popular baked product. The company said in a statement that these new frozen treats, which will be available at Walmart starting this month, come in 6 ice cream sandwich flavors, including glazed cookie donut ice cream, brownie cookie salted caramel ice cream, chocolate chip cookie ice cream, and many more. By entering the novel category, Entenmann's can expand its reach into other sections of the grocery store while not straying too far away from its position in sweets, where it had widespread market recognition. Today we are welcomed by Jeff Mano, co-founder of FlexCold. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Hey, Mary. Great to be here.
I am very excited for today. I have been kind of secretly following you guys, not so secretly, following you guys for a while. And I don't know, I think what you guys have is pretty cool. So I'm excited to dive into it today. Before we jump too far down that rabbit hole, why don't you give us a brief rundown and what led you to start FlexCold?
Sounds great. So as Mary mentioned, Jeff Mano, my background, I spent the better part of 15 years in institutional real estate. Most recently worked for a company, Greystar Real Estate Partners, primarily focused on multifamily and student housing. A lot of experience in hotels, so operationally intensive real estate. What led me to FlexCold was really that I think combination of real estate operations and the ability to sort of integrate technology into the mix to really create a differentiated platform.
I like it. Just kind of, I feel like that unique background that you have in managing some of those other like properties is going to kind of be a nice foundation for getting things off their ground. It might be a little different than a hotel, but the operationally things still have to move. So it's nice to know that you kind of already have that background of like, oh, we adapt things on the fly. We're good to go.
Yes. Well, I think interestingly, we think of the cold storage as a hotel for food.
It really is when you think about it.
And that's a lot of what sort of is integrated into our model. It's really looking at things through that, once again, intersection of real estate technology and operations, but really recognizing that you're housing a diverse landscape of food, diverse landscape of customers that all require different services, offerings, really dependent upon their needs.
I like it. You gotta because everything's got a check in, check out time. It's not staying there forever, and if it is, they're gonna pay a lot to stay there for a while.
Yes, exactly. Hopefully.
So I guess what is kind of because cold storage seems to be growing and growing in various weird market, not necessarily weird, but not necessarily what I would think prime markets all over the country, but kind of how do you see this trajectory of all of this cold storage growth kind of continue on, at least for like the next year or so?
Yeah, we look at it in a couple of ways. One, you have sort of macro trends. One of those is just aging infrastructure. A lot of what exists in the US today is greater than 35 years old. So you have a lot of infrastructure that is just old and antiquated and cannot efficiently service and house the product that exists. That paired with just a very dynamic food supply chain, changes in customer, buying patterns, really the space between production and consumption is just going to continue to put significant pressure on what exists today. While you have a lot of new entrants and new supply that has come into the market most recently, we believe that there's a long runway to continue to really create value in this space. And it really is continuing to look at how to innovate from a real estate perspective, how to really innovate and integrate the building design and programming within those four walls to really pair up with the operational requirements, and really understanding the customers and their needs to, really stay ahead of what we believe is a very dynamic space.
I feel like every other day I'm reading something that's like, oh, cold storage or is supposed to increase by this much, or frozen food is increasing in its demand. And I mean, I see it myself when I go to the grocery store. I feel like every time I go there, the freezer cases have all been rearranged. And I'm like, man, at this point in time, like they're going to need to add another aisle of freezer because, ice cream takes up half the aisle and then pizza has almost its own aisle. So it's one of those where and also more than that, like the rise of frozen vegetables and convenience foods like this, like I think it's really just going to only continue to grow and develop and be kind of like the next, I don't almost like gold rush of freight.
Yes. Yeah. I think the diversification of products that require storage and require services above and beyond that. You mentioned just in the freezer aisles, but you look at just the grocery store in general with, lactose intolerant food and ethnic foods, and it's just the amount of the differentiation that exists once again between that production and consumption, not only in the U.S. in the grocery stores, but where food that's being produced in the U.S., where it's going globally, seafood that is produced and processed, outside of the U.S., moving into the U.S. All of that infrastructure that is required to really continue to stay ahead of and service what is just a very dynamic space, which goes back to why I got into it. It was really ultimately food's essential, but it's a space that is, very dynamic. If you can look at that integration and alignment between the real estate technology and operations, we believe that, there's a long runway to continue to create value in a space that's essential to all of us.
Oh, absolutely. I think that runway is only going to keep getting longer and longer as we go forward. But I guess kind of what is the ultimate goal for flex cold? Like when someone says flex cold, what do you want it to kind of be like synonymous with? And kind of what's the overall like long-term vision for it?
Yep. Yeah. We want to build a great culture that will continue to attract um, high performing, culturally aligned individuals that really continue to enhance and expand our capabilities across this sort of real estate technology and operational spectrum. We're looking to be a disruptor in the space. Jacksonville is our first opportunity and our first facility, but we're looking to set this business up to go out and build a strategic network of 8 to 10 plus facilities over the next 3 to 5 years. And I think from that point in time, we really see where we continue to position ourselves to, continue to leverage our capabilities to I think create value, leverage customer relationships, continue to be, hopefully a platform that groups look at and really see as sort of leading the industry through, I think, an evolution.
I like it. I have a suggestion if you would like. I think it should be flex cold, the refrigerated hotel. Just, a little come in, come out, stay as long as you need. We got you. No matter what, just like kind of like we accept everybody. Come on, we'll keep it cold, we'll keep it frozen, we'll keep it whatever you need. Might not have the right buzz for marketing, but I like it.
Yes.
So I guess you said that you already have your first facility in Jacksonville, which we'll touch on the whys of that in a little bit. But before we go into that, I guess I kind of want to know, how do you keep momentum? Because I mean, it's expensive to build facilities, and usually when companies are first starting out, they don't just have like a blank check to write whatever you want. So kind of how do you balance that momentum and that desire for growth? Without like running out of money.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think what's exciting is we're in a space that is there's high barriers to entry. It's specialized. I think the fact that we have we determined a business plan, and over the last 3 years we've executed on that business plan by delivering this initial facility, proving concept, setting up operations, building a team. It's a space that is attractive to a wide range of investors and capital groups. And I think we're continuing to be thoughtful and strategic about who we partner with and how we set ourselves up for really this transition from startup to scaling up. Capital is clearly a huge component, but people and resources are another. And it's continuing to make sure we have the right people in the right positions to continue to, build the right foundation that is going to allow us to build off of the success that we've created here in Jacksonville, but really do it at a pace that is in line with, I believe, the opportunity. As you mentioned, it's only getting more expensive to build the warehouses. Land is only becoming more scarce. So I think our model of really looking at building efficiency within the warehouse, really understanding the design and programming within those four walls to really align with operational requirements to continue to stay ahead of, I think, an industry that is going to still or experience a lot of pressure from just continued pressure or continued cost increases.
Oh, absolutely. I kind of feel that like cold storage warehouses right now are almost like a field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. But it's also just, getting it built and making sure it's run efficiently, because it's one thing to have a space, but to have, not something that's necessarily run operationally well, that's going to be a detriment. I also kind of like that you guys have seen the importance of the human part and staffing appropriately and the important culture that comes within that warehouse, because it's not easy to hire people to work at a refrigerated warehouse. So I think that, not wasting any additional capital or resources on high turnover, I think that that's where that culture move is such a smart idea, because you don't have to just keep replacing people. You can actually then say like, we have a good group of people, we have a pretty set team, and then that frees up, your entire operations for expanding and growing another one. So I really like that you guys have taken that culture approach, because I feel like at the end of the day, that's going to be the ultimate thing that sets you guys apart and say, everyone's easy to work with. We don't have high turnovers. You know who you're going to talk to if something goes wrong. You can just go ahead and call Sheila and she's on it.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a people centric business. And as much as we're going to continue to um, really challenge ways to integrate and leverage technology, it's still a people centric business. You're still engaging with people on the other side of the phone with customers, and you have to be a people first business, and really provide an environment that is going to allow us to ultimately compensate at the degree that's necessary and to continue to attract the right people, which goes back to this design and programming and looking at ways to really drive those efficiencies through the upfront cost, through the ongoing operational costs and utilities and insurance and taxes, really building a more efficient footprint, looking at things back to the hotel for food. We look at things on a per pallet basis. It's all about the pallet. That's what drives everything. Same thing as a hotel room, same thing as an apartment unit. It's all about the pallet. And if we can continue to find ways and integrate um, innovation, if you will, into the design and programming on the front end, it's going to create a more competitive cost basis and operational landscape to allow us to continue to attract and build the right team and environment that is going to be the foundation for where we go from here.
So I guess when you talk about the innovation, what are some of the cooler innovations you guys have put into place in some of your operations that you're just kind of like the thing that you're probably the most proud of? You're like, oh, that was a really good move that we did.
Yeah, it starts with mobile racking, which basically you have racking that sits on a mobile base to create more densification of the asset. So we built a 150,000 square foot warehouse here in Jacksonville with 25,000 pallet positions. Traditionally, with double deep racking or other racking systems, you would have need to built another 75, 80,000 square feet of real estate to house the same amount of pallet positions. So that's huge as you think about upfront costs, as you think about energy usage, utilities, um, the profitability and the savings that can be generated over a long period of time when you're building critical food infrastructure that's going to be around for 25, 30, 35 years. I think that's really the basis of how we got into this. One of my partners, another co-founder, Todd Jessup, started a company that was, the business model was mobile racking and integrating that racking into industrial warehouse spaces, which over the course of time started to play more into the cold storage space because of cost, because of the ongoing cost to operate these warehouses. I brought the real estate capabilities, the capital, which you mentioned, which kind of goes to this vertically integrated platform. It's not just we're not just operators, we're not just technology integrators, we're not just real estate guys. We're really cross-functional in leveraging those disciplines to really create value and sort of challenge how to best position this opportunity in a space that is just it's critical to continue to look at ways to create more efficiencies because of everything we've talked about.
I think that mobile racking is literally the definition of make the most out of what you have. To free up that much extra space is insane and to me seems almost unheard of. But I mean, I'm not necessarily an expert in warehouse operations, but I think that's such a smart move because you literally just said, okay, we have this amount of space. We have to figure out what we do and to create I'm very impressed that you were able to create that much extra square footage through just one simple, I mean, probably not simple, but one decision in just the type of racking that you set up.
Yes, yeah, it's there's simplicity in it, but it's I would say it's a complicated execution across the board.
I mean, anything that sounds really nice and simple usually has a little bit of complexity to it. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yes, absolutely.
So I guess why did you guys choose Jacksonville Port or the Port of Jacksonville as your first location? I mean, we talked to the port a couple weeks ago. We know the cold storage space is booming there, but it's booming in other areas as well. So what made Jacksonville, Florida, like you were like, yes, this is it. Let's do it.
We're a Charleston-based company, Charleston, South Carolina. Our focus is the Southeast. Why Jacksonville? A lot of the recent supply over the last 3-4 years that has come into the space has focused on larger tier one markets. Your Dallases, Atlanta, Chicago. Um, Jacksonville was attractive because we see it as a high growth market. You have Jacksport that has made significant investments into deepening the harbor, investments in the infrastructure, cranes, and the physical infrastructure required to handle more volume. Logistically, Jacksonville is positioned much more efficiently than South Florida, as an example, to really access a large amount of population in the Southeast. Great labor pool, great place to do business. The city of Jacksonville, the state, have been phenomenal to work with, and it really, and we found a great piece of land that was 3 miles from one of the main terminals, the Blunt Island Terminal, and it all fell into place. A fundamental thesis for us is people, population, and ports, or people, production, and ports. You've got a lot of people migrating to the southeast. You've got a port in Jacksonville, but you have other ports on the east coast of the U.S. that are continuing to gain more market share, and you have a significant amount of food production that happens in the southeast. Jacksonville was really at the sort of middle of kind of that tier two growth market, but really overlaying sort of the fundamentals that we believe are really critical. And you have aging infrastructure. Yeah, there's new product coming, but ultimately what exists today, really kind of checks that aging infrastructure box for us.
On top of everything that you guys found at Jacksonville, what else, like what other traits do you look for in a market when you're going to expand? So, for example, if you're going to go maybe up to Charleston or Savannah, like what are some of those other things that you look at to expand into a market?
Yeah, I mean, we really there's three main, I would say, driving factors. First is supply demand. What exists in the market. What is the demand for that space. And you look at port markets or inland sort of population centers, the demand's going to vary. You really have sort of five main segments. You have proteins, you have finished goods, you have and then within each of those segments, you have various forms of sort of product and customer landscape. So really, it's understanding that demand picture. In Jacksonville, you have poultry going out, you have seafood coming in, you have finished goods getting distributed out. So really understanding that demand picture. Then what exists from an existing supply, aging infrastructure, what are the services that are currently being offered by that existing product and those existing providers? What are the services that are necessary to continue to capture that demand, or in some cases, create more demand? So it's really working with, you mentioned Charleston. We have close relationships with the Port of Charleston. It's understanding what their needs are as far as a 3PL provider. There's a lot of poultry that goes out of the port in Charleston, similar to a lot of the East Coast ports. Not a lot of seafood coming in. How can we bring our customer relationships? So the third piece is really that's relationships. How do we leverage our customer relationships, vendors, strategic relationships with ports, or with the various sort of municipalities, incentives. There's a lot of layers to what makes a successful cold storage warehouse. There's a lot of front end work with, whether it be the port or the city of Jacksonville in the case of Jacksonville, or city of Charleston. How do we really partner on the front end? How do we really leverage our existing customer relationships, which now at this point in time, 6, 7 months into operations of Jax, which we didn't have on the front end when we were building this facility, we're able to really, we have a proof of concept. We're not perfect at everything. We're continuing to improve and get better, but it's leveraging those relationships to understand their needs in other markets. So it's fundamentally supply and demand, but that sort of supply picture has a number of variables: old, existing operations, service offerings. On the demand side, there's a number of variables, and how do you marry up those two with our ability to deliver something that is modern, is innovative, is really looking at the opportunity over a long period of time to partner with these locales to really create value for both sides.
So it's just a really simple process. Basically you just get it all from Google.
Yes, exactly.
I'm totally kidding. That sounds like a very big undertaking, and I'm surprised that any market gets decided on ever, because that's just, I wouldn't even know where to start to begin sorting through all of that data, and that just, it's a lot. So massive props to you guys for actually being able to make a decision, because my decision paralysis could never.
Well, it's a space that historically, um, you don't have a lot of front end commitments, right? Really getting into the demand side, that's the complicated piece. You can easily figure out where are the warehouses that exist today, who are the operators of those warehouses, but to really understand the demand side, and you go to a market like Chicago, Dallas, those are mature markets. But really looking at sort of growth markets, you're taking more of a leap of faith and really understanding, okay, if we build this facility, how are we going to allow that demand picture to evolve by providing more capacity, by providing better service offerings or service offerings that don't exist today, and really looking at and partnering. I've used that word a lot, partnering with the port in the case of Jax or other port locations to really understand how we can leverage their capabilities, but really bring necessary and needed infrastructure to allow that demand profile to expand, and for us to play a big role in kind of capturing that increased demand.
Ultimately come in and save the day.
Yes, hopefully.
We are running out of time, but there is a question that everyone that comes on the show has to answer, and this time Flex Cold is no exception. So, the hardest question you might be asked all day today: is cereal a soup?
No, no, definitely not. It's its own animal.
I like it. I also think that cereal is not a soup. I think that it's not. It's just, there's no way that it's considered a soup.
No,
But hey, some people have strong opinions on
I,
it.
I
So
can't relate to somebody who thinks they're the same.
well, if someone has any hot takes on cereal as soup, or if they have any questions about maybe some mobile racking, or where the next Flex Cold port is gonna, or the next Flex Cold storage is gonna be, where can they find you outside the show?
They can go to flexcold.com, and follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Instagram. We're pretty out there and visible, and excited to just continue on this journey and look forward to really continuing to position FlexCold as a leader in the space. Really appreciate the time, and thank you for thinking of us.
Anytime. I am very excited about you guys. I am excited to see where the next port is, or the next cold storage facility is. I have my secret guesses, but we'll have to see what happens. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Mary.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice right here on FreightWaves TV, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. See you on the internet.